Hi everyone, I am Nick Smart, the Chief Intelligence Officer at Crystal Intelligence. I'm joined here today by my colleague Rajat.
Hi, I'm Rajat Ahlawat. I'm the APAC Research Lead for Crystal Intelligence.
So today, Rajat, we're going to be discussing some very big news in the theft of $80+ million from Nobitex, the largest by volume cryptocurrency exchange in Iran, which has been claimed by a hacking group called Gonjeshke Darande, which translates roughly to Predatory Sparrow. So Darande
Yeah.
means predatory and Gonjeshke means a sparrow. The group themselves is fairly sophisticated, has done a variety of attacks against particularly Iranian interests going back as far as 2021, where they targeted fuel stations, creating a nationwide outage of around 70 to 80% of the stations offline. Estimated costs of about $10 million. So they've done the same sort of attack in 2023. They shut down the railway networks in 2021. They targeted a steel company in 2022. In recent days, given the escalations between Israel and Iran, they've attacked the financial infrastructure, and particularly they've gone after Bank SEPA, which is the Iranian payment system, and also Nobitex, the largest cryptocurrency, with a large amount of assets stolen. I think what would be helpful for our viewers, Rajat, is a bit of context, like who are Nobitex and why are they significant?
Like Novitex is the largest cryptocurrency exchange operational in Iran. They have been operational for quite some time. Back in late 2022, they came up in the mainstream English media because of their connections with Binance. Basically, Binance helped Novitex do transactions worth $8.2 million, and that's when they majorly came to light. Novitex currently is by far the largest cryptocurrency exchange in Iran. It has over 6 million active user base, and most of the tokens that can be traded are being traded on Novitex.
That's an interesting point because as we've spoken about in other conversations about how really big cryptocurrency is inside Iran. One of the things that sort of stand out to me is there are some allegations that this particular entity has ties to the IRGC and the government. Have you seen any credibility on those allegations?
We know that IRGC has been involved in using cryptocurrencies for payments to various groups in the Middle East. Iran, in general, has been quite active in the crypto sphere, and we've been seeing reports that Iran is using crypto for their trade with China and Russia mainly. The Nobitex being the largest cryptocurrency exchange, I'm pretty sure that some bits of it are being used by the government or like IRGC to evade sanctions, but then at the same time there are multiple other ways to do it, and like Novitex is not the only one. Just because it's the biggest player in the Iranian market, it trades close to like some tens of billions of dollars every year. But also there are smaller players. There are over 100 operators in that country. But also recently we've been seeing major influential businessmen who has started different business initiatives in the country, and one of those is a crypto exchange. Now, this individual has reportedly close ties with the government and the IRGC. So, I would say there are multiple ways for IRGC to use crypto, and Nobitex is like not the only one.
If you are the biggest cryptocurrency exchange inside a country like Iran, there is no way that you can operate without some tacit approval, at least from the government. Like, you're not going to have the ability to provide proper services. And what's difficult to understand in this relationship is whether or not they are directly coerced, as in, like, do they do it because they have to, or are they doing it because they have like an ideological alignment? And that's not completely apparent to me, at least. And I haven't seen lots and lots of clear communication around that. And I think that's what I find this theft particularly difficult to process is I will never shed a tear for sanctions put against the IRGC. However, 6 million active users, Nobitex, the largest exchange, the reality is that many of the people who are using that are not necessarily members of the government or not necessarily politically aligned to the government. Many normal Iranians are using cryptocurrency as a way of dealing with a rapidly failing economy inside Iran. What's your sort of take on the relationship between Iran and cryptocurrency businesses specifically? How much complicitly are they hand in glove with each other, or do you think like it's more of a case you either do it or there's trouble?
I think it's a bit of both. In Iran, the cryptocurrency is also used as a hedge against inflation, because the Iranian Toman has been depreciating fairly quickly and has lost a lot of value over the last few years. So a lot of Iranians actually buy USDT just to keep that hedge. It's also interesting to note at this point that every time there's a situation like this, like even in October last year when Iran fired some missiles on Israel, the central bank stopped USDT and Toman trade mainly because to conserve the depreciating currency. Currently, as well, over the last few days, the central bank has been issuing a daily warning to the users that Iranian Toman to USDT trade is allowed. So every day, like all the exchanges, Novitex included, were publishing these notices that the Toman to USDT trade is stopped. And also with the current attack that happened, people are just not exactly get rid of USDT, but also like replace it with other currencies. So since today, the value of USDT for Iranian Toman has fallen by approximately 20%. And also, since Iranians don't have access to international gateways because of sanctions, they have to rely on cryptocurrencies for remittances, for any cross-border payments. And also, this is where a majority of these 100 like local cash to crypto operators come in. They're based in all major cities. We have evidences of some of them being operational in the country. And also recently, central bank restricted the fiat currency gateway access to the Iranian exchanges. So this is also the point where these cash to crypto services and other smaller exchanges, which were ready to comply with the central bank guidelines, they also picked up the business, and also they are also becoming a major hub for trading and transfers of cryptocurrencies. Like there are two factors at this point because the USDT volumes on Nobitex were more or less stable because there was no USDT to Toman trade. And also a bunch of their business have been like these smaller players are eating some share of their businesses.
I want to talk a bit about the actual hack itself and like what the fallout is from this, because there are lots of things that perhaps unpack. So, although Novitex and other Iranian businesses are under sanctions, they are not on the SDN list, for example, by OFAC. And the difference is that by not being on the SDN list, like you're restricted in doing business with them, but you don't freeze money that comes from them specifically. Like there's a like slightly more different legislation around it. The follow on to this, and I think it's something that we've seen a lot in our research and investigations, is the money's been stolen, and I think stolen is the correct way of describing it because it was taken without distinction for a particular user. Much of that money may be just individual user deposits. It's like normal folk who've put money on a cryptocurrency exchange based on the reasons that we see them using it for. It wasn't sanctioned. This was an attack against the service, and the money was removed from its custody, and it can no longer be accessed to the people who had it. There are a few sort of like things at play here. One is that no one's going to shed a tear if the IRGC loses $80 million. But I think the concern I have is that there's now no recourse for the people who've lost. And comparatively to other large scale thefts, there's very little support, if any, that could actually happen to the users of the exchange. Whereas when we had exchanges in other jurisdictions who also had, I wouldn't say like, checkered past, they weren't like necessarily bad guys, but they certainly had some dealings with high risk or illicit services in the past. There was lots of support for them, including we'll get your money back, we'll help you. What do you think is the future like for these victims of theft who are like the normal guys who are using the platform? What do you think their future looks like in terms of getting their money back?
So there has been a lot of activity around this on Novitex's official channels on Twitter. People saying that they kept a lot of their money on Novitex as a hedge against the current inflation. And with the hack, they might have lost all of their life savings. Many people were reporting this. Nobitex has been acting as a responsible and established exchange in that way. They initially in the morning around 7:30 Europe time CEST, they declared that the access to the platform is restricted. They said because of the internet restrictions that are going on in the country. But about an hour after that, around 8:30, they said that the exchange has been hacked, the hot wallet and some information and source code is compromised. They actually reported the hack before ZachXBT did it. And then they have been continuously updating it. They said the support channels are closed at this point, but they have been like communicating through the official Telegram channels. It's on all the social media channels: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Telegram. They said that they'll be compensating all the users for it. Their cold wallet funds are secured. If they had any remaining funds, they transferred it to the wallets that were in their control. They said that they'll refund all the users via the funds in the cold wallet and also through the insurance that they had.
It's not a victimless crime. We see this a lot in fraud, for example, where a group will target one particular service purporting to be from a geopolitical rival, be it like a ransomware gang seeking refuge inside Russia, potentially attacking targets inside the West, or even like Taiwanese fraud gangs targeting Chinese people on the mainland of China, knowing that there's never going to be any repercussions or consequences to them. I feel like this is particularly savage because we've seen in other cases, particularly in Iran, where fraud groups have targeted Iranians because they know there's no help. Like externally, they're isolated very politically, and it's very difficult for people to get any sort of help with these kind of cases. I feel like this is like particularly insidious because there's nothing that can be done to really help them. You know, if you receive money from the hackers as a Western exchange, how do you give it back? Like, you know, without breaking a rule somewhere, you know, like it's very, very, very challenging. And we haven't mentioned it, but like as part of the attack, all of the USDT was transferred to Tron vanity addresses, which, you know, no one can get access to those addresses. Like, they're not under control of the attackers. They just thrown them at addresses that no one can spend it from, effectively throwing the money in the dustbin. Now, there are obviously mechanisms to move centrally issued stable coins, but that puts the stablecoin issue in like a really precarious position because how do you give it back to Novitex given like there may be established links to the IRGC and the Ayatollah? Like, how the hell do you give them the money back even if you want to? I think it's very, very complicated. But I just think, like, the general question, Rajat, like, what's your view on this? Do you think this is an effective act of economic warfare within a conflict between two nations at war, or do you think it's an example of perhaps, you know, vigilantism or exceptionalism? Like, what would you suggest?
From what I'm seeing, it looks to me like a well orchestrated operation because it also fits with the recent Israeli rhetoric that they have been saying while attacking Iran, that they are against the regime and not against the country. So they have repeatedly mentioned like they're against the Ayatollah. They also asked the people to rise. There have been revolutions in Iran in the past, unsuccessful, of course. But like recently, the sequence of it, like banks are being attacked first, followed by Nobitex. These are two major institutions in like traditional currency and cryptocurrency spares. So Bank SIPA has very strong ties with the IRGC and also like one of the largest banking operators in the country. They actually also provide payment infrastructure for normal card payments. So people were saying cannot withdraw money from the ATMs, they cannot do petrol pump transactions. The hackers claim that they've deleted all of the data, so the banking services would be near impossible. It's going to be interesting how soon they are restored because the monthly financial cycle may moves from 22nd to 22nd. People will be expecting their monthly salaries into their bank accounts. And if this doesn't happen, if this doesn't come in time, I think it's gonna add to the woes of the people. And also, like if they had some, let's say, reserves in the crypto exchange like Nobitex, it's again a risk. All of this thing combined, this looks like a series of economic offenses aimed at generally destabilizing the country economically and also promoting, in a way, discontent among the population.
The last thing I'd sort of say too is Israel has really had a very competent and very capable sanctioning apparatus. Like the National Bureau of Counterterrorism and Financing is like one of several in the world. Like there aren't many that have published lists of cryptocurrency wallet addresses which Crystal follow, and we ensure that they are tagged in our system to be compliant. Similarly, OFAC, the US sanctioning authority, has the same sort of thing. What I feel like this is unfortunate about is that NBCTF kind of gives the users a choice. Like it sets some backstory. It says that this address is associated with this person. You can choose to remove your money from that platform. And again, an example I would use in parallels this is Garantex. When Garantex was sanctioned by the US government laid very bare the crimes that Garantex had committed. I feel like in this particular case is the users didn't get a choice about whether or not they wanted to continue to do business or trading with that. Like that link between Nobitex and the IRGC wasn't presented to them, and individual users don't have a choice about what's going to happen. You money just take it. Now, Nobitex said they're going to make them whole. Let's see what happens. But still, as a user, I feel like sort of slighted by that, and I feel that's the big difference here. I find this kind of approach is beyond any sort of like control. They don't have to offer any evidence of why they've done it. They just say that they're bad, and that's us. We've got to accept it. And unfortunately, this is almost the same logic that we see with other hacking groups where they steal money, which is, well, we think they're bad, therefore, we can do what we like. And I think, like, ironically, is that this is almost the same logic that perhaps Lazarus used when they steal money from exchanges, which is you support other causes that don't align with ours. And I think this is an unhealthy precedent to set in terms of these kind of things. Like, always, sanctions feels like the right way to go. Yeah, it doesn't work. There's always ways around it. There's always problems with the system. But the reality is, you can't distinguish on a financial service who's good money, who's bad money. If you could break into Novitex and read all of their files, and you can see all of these wallet addresses are associated with IRGC members, if you're going to bother to do that kind of work, you could probably take the money directly from there, or you could freeze their account, and you could transfer it out, and then leave everyone else. But the reality is, this is a blanket kind of statement against a whole group of people. And there will be people who have different political views, but there are also people who are just like normal folk trying to live their life. This seems very indiscriminate comparatively for that. The Israeli intelligence services have a very strong track record of threat finance operations, particularly like some really cool stuff. There's a fantastic book called Harpoon, which talks about a specialized unit within the Mossad, which was designed to tackle terrorism financing. One of my favorite stories was defrauding the personal financier of Yasser Arafat by convincing him to invest in a Ponzi scheme, basically, and taking money from him. Now, in that particular case, like, to use that as a reference for this one, is that's very directed. Like, he is the personal financier of a guy who is a designated enemy of the state, right? Whereas this is kind of like going after like the whole of a national branch of banks who've got everybody's money in it. Whereas that operation was like highly targeted and very easy to distinguish who it was. This one is far more broad.
So, while the hack resulted in a loss of a little over $80 million, it's possible that IRGC might have some stakes in this money, but it looks like it's majorly the public funds. And although Novitex has said that they'll reimburse the funds that the public has lost, again, like, we don't know if it's gonna turn out to be true or how long it's gonna take. So all this while, the people are basically stuck without their funds. And as they say, don't keep all your eggs in one basket. IRGC, we know for a fact, like, has been using multiple services. So we know they have diversified their assets portfolio. They have diversified operators and transfer patterns that they use. At the end, they will still have access to a lot of their funds on blockchains, but I guess it's majorly the general public who will be, well, left hanging in this scenario.
The thing I would add into what you're saying, like, just to sort of reiterate, is like, it's the IGC aren't stupid enough to put everything in one place. Like, it's not their account solely, like, it's multiple people, and that's the problem with this particular thing. I also think the precedent is concerning too. Maybe we'll be proven wrong. I always leave that open. Maybe the information that the Gonjeshke Darande are talking about will be published and reveal the hidden depths of Novitex's inner workings and disclose those relationships financially between regime officials and the exchange itself. But until that's forthcoming, we really can't condone in any sort of way do that. Even if there are those links, I guarantee that 6 million users of the platform, not all of them were members of the state apparatus and profiting heavily from use of that platform. Rajat, thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely fantastic discussing this. Maybe we should try and discuss something other than Iran, but I know we talk about it a lot in our conversations. And just as the viewers can understand, it's like at Crystal, we always have these conversations. And what we wanted to do in these cases is share some of the workings that go on. We're trying to understand the complexity of financial crime involving cryptocurrencies, and we're constantly looking at that. We really spend our time and energy to understand the depth of the story and the people behind it. It's been fantastic talking to you today, Rajat. If you can read more about this, we'll be publishing a blog on this particular incident forthcoming. And yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Rajat.
Thank you.